Hi, hello, hope all is well, apart from your broken Sony headphones. If you wish to replace any of these parts on your broken 950BT, 950B1, 650BT and then also the 550BT, you will need a soldering iron, and of course you must know how to use it. So in this case we have a 950B1 which is broken on this side, which is the left channel. The hinge is broken and someone's tried to glue it and it didn't work. But I'm going to use the good side, which is not broken. So once I take it all apart, pull the cable out, then put everything back together so you know what the result will look like. So you will take your broken headset, whichever side is broken, you pull away the padding, just comes off quite easily. There are 4 screws in here. You undo these 4 screws. I have taken most of the screws out to, of course, save some time with the video. And then you are able to lift this top section off, which holds the driver on the inside of this housing, from this section which has the board, and also the battery sits behind this cover. This is the right channel once again, by the way. If you are working on your left channel and you wish to replace any of these parts, and if you was to desolder the wire on this end, you must disconnect these battery terminals, and I'll explain to you why. If these terminals are connected to the board here and these wires are soldered on to this board and they continue all the way around to the other end, so the circuit is complete. Once you pull the cable out from this section, the wires will touch each other and that will short the board and the battery, which can damage the board or the battery. So once again, if you're working on your left channel, you are replacing any of these parts, you must disconnect these battery terminals, for which you will need a soldering iron. And once you disconnect these 2 terminals, make sure they don't touch each other, otherwise you will damage the battery. But if you are working on your right channel, which is circled in red as an R, then you don't have to disconnect these batteries, because if you are replacing parts on your right channel, once you desolder these wires, the circuit is not complete, so for that reason you will not have a short on this side. I hope that made sense. So now we will continue with our disassembly on the headset, and we are pretending this side is broken. What you want to do now is undo these 2 screws on the inside of your casing. This casing holds the hangar, and also it holds this assembly on to this sliding assembly. You have 2 screws in the front, so you undo them as well. Now in here you will see a sticky tape which is sort of stuck on to some of the cables, or some of the wires should I say. You peel this sticky tape back, comes off just like that, stick it to one side, and then you will need a tweezer if you have one. It makes your work easy to hold the wires individually and hold them in a way you want. So we will go ahead and desolder these wires. Take a picture of this section of the board so you know what order the cables or the wires go back on, or you can write down the order of the colors on the wires, so once you put everything back together you don't make a mistake. So white was first, and then we have a black, then we have light green, then we have pink, then we have green with copper, then we have pure copper, and then we have red with copper. Okay, that's your wires desoldered. Now you can go ahead and release the hanger from this housing. So you just grab one end and pull it out. Same on the other. And that comes out with the cable. Your driver and the housing is free, so that goes to one side. And now you have your hanger and this piece of cable, which we will name as stage 1. This piece of cable is stage 1. Stage 2 of the cable is sitting behind this plastic cover or this trim. You need something sharp, and what you want to do is you want to come into this corner here and you want to insert your sharp tool under this plastic trim through this gap, and you are able to lift this plastic trim piece out. And in here sits the cable. You will need something roundish, so in this case I'm using this tweezer. And the reason why roundish, so once you try to get under the cable to lift the cable out, so you don't end up cutting the cable or damaging the cable, so you want to come into this very corner just here. And the reason why we are doing this in the very corner is because it's very hard to pry the cable out the cavity at this point or this point or even this point. So I find it quite easy to get under the cable just here, and then you are able to pull stage 1 of the cable out. That's stage 1, and then stage 2 is this section, so that comes out. And if you look on the inside of the hanger, you find these 2 plastic covers. You want to remove this cover, which is on the same side as where the cable is. Once again, your sharpest tool. In here you find a little gap. You insert the tool in this gap and lift this plastic cover up. That comes out. And in here you will see a small part of the cable. You get under the cable, insert your tool, take your time, and then you are able to pull the loose end out first. So that's stage 3, and this is stage 4. So 4 steps releases the hanger. So if you are only replacing the hanger, then you just reverse the procedure, feed the cable back through. Quite easy, which I'll show that to you in a second. The next step is you reach this casing, which is dangling around the cable because it's broken off from the hinge section. So if you look carefully in here, this part here, this section here is what usually breaks on these headphones, and this piece is left inside in here, and you have yourself a broken headphone and you can't use them. So you pull this piece out, which is the casing. So if your hinge or the swivel point is broken, which is part of this sliding assembly, this assembly has 3 screws. You undo these 3 screws, and then this outside section of the trim comes away, just like that. Slide this sliding assembly all the way down, and then you are able to snap this assembly off its rail just here, and then you are able to pull the cable out through this hole. So if your hinge section is broken, which is part of this sliding assembly, you get your replacement, and then now you will do the reverse of the disassembly procedure. What you do is hold the cable, or hold the wires, should I say, like so. You want to hold them in such a way where you make sort of a pointy shape of all the wires, and then you are able to feed them through this hole, wiggle them about, okay, one cable has folded in, or it's not gone through. If it's only 1 or 2 wires that have not gone through, you are able to pull them through the hole quite easily. But if it's 3 or 4, then I don't think you should pull the cable through. Just take the cable back out, hold the wires in that pointy shape, and then try again, and you should be able to come through. So that's the sliding assembly with the hinge section. You snap this back onto its railing, just like that, and you will need to leave this much cable in this section here, because once you adjust the length on the headband, you will need that stretch of cable. So it looks like a shape of an S. Next piece goes on is the casing. So you will see this locking washer still in there, which looks like a horseshoe. So like I mentioned earlier, this section breaks. You will find that this section still in there. So once you remove the horseshoe washer, You turn this upside down and that small piece falls out. Then you will put this section back on, run the cable through. The hole is quite big in here, so it's not that difficult. So this section comes back on. It sort of twists on to this joint, just like that. And then don't forget the locking washer. It's a shame Sony went through the trouble to put so many screws and bits and bobs all around the headset to make it as strong as possible, but they didn't think this bit through. Well, if they don't break, then who's going to buy the new ones, right? So once again, don't forget the washer. That goes in there, which locks the casing on to the sliding assembly and onto the hinge. Now, next step will be the hanger, and like in the beginning, we pulled the cable out in 4 stages from the hanger. So we will do the reverse, and now we will insert stage 4. In there, and it will come out to this hole here. So this is stage 4, going in reverse. A couple of strands didn't make it through, but it's still quite easy to pull the cable through with these 2 strands folded in. If it's more than 3 or 4, then I don't think you should pull the cable through, just in case you damage the wire. Once you insert stage 4 through this hanger, go ahead and screw down this hanger on to the casing. Okay, that's done. Now stage 3 of the cable, that has to run through this hole, which was the second bend on the cable. Once again, and I keep saying this again and again, the trick is to take your time, don't rush it, and you will be able to complete your replacement without any problems. It's like doing your shoelaces. Hard work, eh? Okay, so that's stage 3 through this cavity of the hanger. Then stage 2 is the cable sits in this section, this cavity of the hanger. Feed the cable halfway, not all the way, like from here to here, so you have enough slack for you to work the wire through the last stage, which is stage 1. And we are through. Feed the rest of the cable back into its cavity and put this plastic cover back on in here. Sort of clips in. And then also the cover for this section here. Okay, that's in. And now we will insert stage 1 back into its housing. And then you go ahead and insert the hanger into this housing. Just like that. And then now we will solder the wires back onto the board. So the first one was white. Let's solder that back on. Then we had black. Then we have light green. And then we have pink. Once again, take your time, don't rush it, and you will have no problems. Then we have green with copper, which is this one here. Then we have pure copper, which is this one here. And then we have red with copper. Okay, once you solder all the wires back on, check for power. See, that's flashing. So that's a success. The sticky tape that holds the wires into its place, just about there. And then now you can put everything back together. Screw everything down. This trim that goes on the outside of the band. And then your pad. If you look here, this cutout on this lip on the inside of the pad, this cutout sits around this notch here. So what you do is this end of the lip just here, you slide that on to this rim here. So this lip sits around this rim. You see that? Right next to that notch, put your finger on top of this point here so it doesn't come off, and then now you use your other hand to come on the inside of the pad, and you want to feed that lip all the way around the rim. When you will reach halfway, you will feel it's becoming tight, so what you do is you pull and feed that lip around the rim with your finger. then all the way around. And it's all the way in. And that is how you are able to replace any of these parts on your 950B1, 950BT, 650BT, and also the 550BT. Hopefully this video will help you carry out this replacement. As usual, thanks for watching, and speak to you guys soon.